Hey Duncan, thanks so much for coming.
Yes.
Really appreciate you having here. And today we kind of all just want to learn more about OneBanks and what you do and what you guys are looking to do in the future. So if you could just give me a little summary of OneBanks, that'd be awesome.
OneBanks is a bank agnostic platform which facilitates banking transactions for any of the banks under one roof. So it's a one-stop shop for banks in effect.
Okay, interesting. And what are the types of services that you provide?
So the main focus to begin with is access to cash. So we're focusing on cash-based services. So we're introducing, at the start of OneBanks, we're introducing payments, transfers, and then allowing people to deposit money and withdraw money.
Okay.
So they're the four main services that we'll provide.
That's really interesting. And in a time where I think a lot of banks and stuff are going digital, you're focusing on the cash element, and that makes you really unique. And I still think it's quite important as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So have you worked with any companies like Revolut or Monzo, or are you focusing more on the traditional side?
So it's definitely, target market is definitely twofold. It's not only the CMA9 banks who have the presence already and their presence is declining, but also, as you said, the neo-challenger banks who obviously don't have any physical presence and could potentially look to have some physical presence to especially get more traction in the small to medium-sized market, whereby I think around 90% of that market, business market, they all bank with the top 6 banks. So there's definitely a lack of competition when it comes to that. And I think a main part of that is the fact that these neo-challenger banks don't offer that service where they can deposit cash, especially in rural areas, in the Highlands of Scotland, for example, where hairdressers, pubs, they're still very cash dependent. One of the main requirements of these small to medium-sized businesses is the ability to deposit cash. And I think that's something that OneBanks are definitely unique in their proposition.
That's really, really interesting. And because, I mean, tell me about some of the challenges that you face, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot, especially when you're pitching to your clients and talking to companies that, hey, we want to help you with cash, when most people are looking to go digital. What are some of the hurdles that you face? Yeah,
so I suppose the value in the future is digital. The banks realise that. But as we move towards a digital society, there's still a significant demographic which is left behind. So for example, you've got people who live in cash areas, as I said, with small, medium-sized businesses that still get their cash takings on a weekly basis. There's technophobes, people like my dad, for example, hates technology. And then you've got pensioners as well, who again don't really get engaged with that shift towards digital. And I suppose what OneBanks are trying to do is bridge the gap between where banking is now and the future of banking and that digital sort of transformation. Because going back to sort of smart cities, I understand that there's a huge hype with technology and where everything's going, but I think it's important to ensure that everybody is taken along in that journey. And make sure that the whole demographic is involved, and I think OneBanks is a good way to try and facilitate that shift opposed to like a sudden
No, I like that, because you're essentially the balance between the super pro digital currencies as well as the traditional currency. I mean, with the likes of the neobanks that you're talking about, like Revolut and Monzo, you have no choice. You have to either do one or you stick to your traditional means. And I think it's really, really cool and really interesting that you're actually being that midway between them. You're like, no, you you have your digital banking, but let us also give you that alternative option for if you want to then drop cash in or utilize cash.
And it's inevitable that it's not a cost efficient model for these banks. For the big banks that are withdrawing all their bank presence in rural areas, we understand that, and what we've done is we've leveraged open banking, which enables us to facilitate transactions from any bank in one place. And we'll do it in convenient locations, for example, Tesco's, retail outlets, places like that, where customers can come and do their everyday banking transactions. And it's a shared cost model, so it's a lot more cost efficient than current
It's interesting because you really just reminded me of a real big throwback, which was getting cash back when you're doing shopping.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much almost stopped everywhere. When you ask for cash back, hey, can I get £10? No one does it anymore. They don't allow it.
Yeah.
And essentially you're kind of bringing a similar model back. Am I correct in thinking?
So, well, actually quite recently Visa introduced a program whereby they're incentivizing small to medium-sized businesses to do cashback. So they're actually providing a monetary reward for small businesses trying to get cash back into society.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of government panels at the moment. There's Access to Cash, there's UK Finance. They're all working on ways to keep cash in society because they recognise how important it is.
Yeah.
Still for at least maybe the next 20 to 30 years. So with that in mind, yeah, that's a great proposition that they're doing, getting cash back into society. But I suppose it's the other side of that that we're also focusing on. It's trying to get cash, trying to enable people to deposit their cash, not just get it back into society.
Exactly. And
at the moment, the only viable options are post office and the retail bank branches, and the post office are declining. The limited opening hours. So I suppose what we're trying to do is introduce a disruptor to the post office model by combining the digital and cutting edge technologies, but ensuring that it's brick and mortar and there's human interaction still there to help facilitate these transactions.
No, that is really important. I think it is needed. Like you say, there is a specific demographic and there are types of people which prefer to use that method. And I think it's very important that you have a company out there doing something like that.
Yeah.
I would like to ask then, in terms of working with local governments or creating solutions for, let's just say, smart cities, what would you be excited to work on, or where do you see yourselves in OneBanks working?
I think OneBanks fits in really well with the whole smart cities development, and what we are doing with OneBanks, I think, is a really good model for smart city development, whereby the city leaders can capture the benefits that smart cities provides, but doing it in a way in which it ensures human interaction and it puts the human first. Because as digital technologies advance, they're advancing at a rate which is even faster than the humans that deploy it. So it's trying to ensure that there's the balance.
And now that's really amazing, because one of the things that we center ourselves in terms of smart city development is people first, like people-centric smart cities.
Yeah.
So we're developing a smart city, but it has to benefit the individuals and the people in the community that lives within that city. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
If you're going to upgrade something which is going to make someone else's life miserable, then there's something that's going wrong there.
Yeah.
So stuff like this, keeping your options open and keeping things, keep on advancing technology, but at the same time having certain links back to traditional means is an extremely important, I think, cornerstone of a smart city, because you can't immediately go one side, especially in a very developed country like the UK. But that's awesome. So in terms of local government, so are you focused more regionally, or are you also looking internationally?
So we're piloting the project this summer in Scotland, in 2 locations, and then we'll look to scale in Scotland and then nationally.
Okay, excellent.
Because obviously this access to cash problem and the declining number of banks is not just a Scotland problem, it's nationwide. Yeah,
100%. And so what type of key technologies do you think will play a big part in this role? Because there's so much going on. Yeah. What are the things that most appeal to you?
So in terms of technology and the next sort of the way in which technology is going, I think data has obviously played a huge part in the last few years, and I think with that there's 2 key themes. There's accountability and transparency. Yes. And I think in recent years open banking has been brilliant with regards to transparency. It's enabled a lot of startups to build innovative layers on top of the open banking layer.
Yep.
And it results in solutions which are brilliant for people, but it also, with the open banking layer, ensures us that consistency and security, which I think is brilliant. I think open banking is and will continue to play an important role in terms of regaining people's trust with the banking sector.
100%.
And secondly, I think there'll be a growth in distributed ledger technologies, which will allow for increasingly frictionless and more accountable transactions to take place.
Interesting. And that's really interesting. And well, one thing in terms of cashless society that I am thinking about, and maybe some of the challenges you might face, is AML and KYC. And I presume you're hearing that a lot, timelessly. And I think it's one of your biggest challenges. In terms of, I mean, what type of measures have you put up for that? Because I know you must know this inside out.
Yeah,
that's just really interesting.
You say it's the biggest challenge, and it has been the biggest challenge, but I think from the biggest challenge, it's now become the biggest opportunity.
Okay.
And the way that we're dealing with it is unique. We're ensuring that the AML risk is dealt with upfront. So sorry, we'll split this into two. We've got the KYC and the anti-money laundering piece. So for the know your customer piece, we're doing that by leveraging the security which is on people's iPhones. It's different for different demographics, so we've ensured that we've got know your customer procedures in place for those who don't have iPhones. But if you do have an iPhone, you can turn up at OneBanks kiosk and you can take a picture of a QR code. So we've got lots of different security. Security is at the focus of the business, and with regards to the AML procedures that we've got in place, something that we do differently to the post office. The post office, you can go in and you can bank your cash with a pay-in slip, and then the risk is then transferred to the bank to deal with. What we're doing is flipping that on its head, and we are dealing with the risk up front. So we're developing custom APIs which integrate with the bank's transactional risk monitoring systems. So all the banks at the moment have the risk monitoring systems which monitor their acceptance tolerance to money laundering. It says, for example, if Joe Bloggs turns up with £50,000 cash, we will be able to send a request to that bank, the specific bank, and say, are you okay to accept this cash, this risk? And they'll come back in, I think, around 12 seconds to say yes or no. And
okay, wow, that's really quick.
Yeah, it's just that's the way we're going, is to focus on dealing with the money laundering procedures right away, because we understand that's the most pivotal part of this business.
Excellent. All right. Thanks so much, Duncan. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for now, but I'm sure you're going to be really interesting to keep tabs on upcoming, and looking forward to seeing you at my local Tesco's, for sure.
That's good.
But been a pleasure, Duncan. Thank you so much.
Cheers.